Evening, people. I hope everyone is well, and welcome to another late night discussion to BNR and the world of BNR's content. You might need some Red Bull to listen to us on a normal occasion, but today we're going to be talking all about Red Bull and CFG, the City Group, Ineos, the Eagle Group, and amongst other big, powerful players in the world of multi-club ownership. With me are the two most powerful men on Liverpool's Twitter space, the blue chip and Mobby, the man himself. Hope
No,
everyone's good. Boys, how are you, man? Keeping well?
Asim, it's only blue chip. It's not me, man. Come on. And blue chip is blue. We are
Blue
not
chip is a
lucky. We're
very,
not
very
lucky.
powerful name, Mobby. He's so powerful that he changes his name week to week.
Listen, not everybody can get access to Uncle Henry's Christmas dinner speeches. So, we know who's powerful. So, big up here, guys. Guys, smash the like, follow, please.
Just like Gene says, smash the like button on your way in because this is something different, Abby. We're normally talking about goals and chances and tactics and your academy work within the academy, but this is slightly different where it's the evolution of the football game, but it's also the evolution of BNR tonight that we're talking about something different, but it's a big, big change. It's the evolution, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch with the growing trend of MCI.
MCO,
MCO, sorry. I'm not
MCI.
talking about. There's a difference. I was coming to the MCI because MCO is the multi-club ownership. MCI is the multi-club investment.
Investment. No,
That's my
very good.
second question to you. You maybe you can go into it. The difference between the ownership and the investment.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with the word evolution. I think it's time that we kind of evolved into the market, doing a little bit extra. And we'll talk, obviously, pick Moby's brain on why Liverpool are going to this route, albeit slightly late, but Moby will sort of say, no, it's probably like the right step to do. The timing's probably right. But, first things first, Michael Edwards is in. It was a great decision by the club to go back in for him, to entice him, to make him an offer where he didn't want to. He said, he admitted himself, he said he didn't want to come back in a sporting director role. He wanted something bigger, and boy, he's got the challenge of a lifetime. And I think he'll be a successful operational director, if that's the word, or the CEO or sporting director, or however you want to call it. I think he'll be a great appointment for the club. And no, we'll go into it. We know Man City have already started that trend with having 13 sort of partner clubs, all around the world. So they've cornered every kind of continent apart from Antarctica when it comes to having this sort of multi-club ownership. And we'll talk about it because it's not something new at him. It has sort of been happening, these feeder clubs back in the early 2000s. We saw it with United. We saw it with Liverpool, kind of with Crew Alexandra towards the late 90s. But this is a whole different ball game. It's much more advanced. Red Bull are so successful at it. We know that they own 4 teams all around the world, but we'll go into it. Moby, how are you? First things first, Moby, if you don't mind. Manchester City, they have 13 partner clubs. Now, I want to know, we know what advantages that brings to Man City, but what are the advantages that it brings to the feeder clubs?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I believe they have 13 clubs they own fully under their ownership, and they have a club in Bolivia that's actually a partner club where they don't own it, but they have signed off on some partnership. Actually, I might be wrong. I think they signed somebody recently. I'm just trying to rack my brain who was. They just bought a club recently as well. Oh man, I can't remember now. But they closed the club I think 3 months ago as well. So they're just been on a spending spree. Well, the idea of a multi-club ownership, in theory, it's not a good thing because it affects the fan base of these clubs, and most of them are historic clubs. And obviously, every football group will have its crown jewel, its top club, and everybody else will be step below that, and they'll get investment accordingly. And to be honest, there's been a lot of owners that have ignored the fan bases of many clubs out there, and done things that are not for the benefit of the club. Botafogo in Brazil club fans are really angry at John Textor, who is owner of Crystal Palace, or the way they have run the club. Same with Molenbeek, who also owns a club in Belgium. Chelsea's club Strasbourg in League One. There's daily, weekly protests against the ownership. So, in theory, it's not a good thing, but it's too late to do anything about it. 105 clubs, top clubs in Europe, top meaning they're playing in top tier, have some sort of partnerships with clubs out there. And unfortunately, it's too late to stop this MCO growing. So if you want to be in a race, you have to join in. Sitting outside is not an option. So I just wanted to start off with that, and and I'll go in a little bit more into details about what are the benefits they can bring us.
Wait, is this an acceptance for Liverpool today, Moby? That before, I think Billy Hogan in the past has batted it off saying, look, we're going to focus on Liverpool and what Liverpool are doing. But with this new energy that Michael Edwards is talking about, he's reinvigorating Liverpool off the pitch, his data analysis background, and the sort of the background that he's had, that bringing players on, providing pathways into Liverpool, and then sort of selling the Moneyball type of signings. Is this like an official acceptance for Liverpool that the tide is changing, that the new era will be so different after Klopp leaves?
It's a really good question. I think if I'm Michael Edwards, I think I made a really, really, really smart decision. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult for whichever coach to come in to do all the things that Klopp achieved, and maybe they will, but chance of their fate not being there is pretty high, right? I mean, you're not going to get this kind of generational coach all the time. Granted, Xabi Alonso or whoever comes in could be much better, but that's it to be seen. But if I'm Michael Edwards, I've done everything that I could possibly do. I've won everything with the club pretty much. What is the next challenge? And I think for him, this multi-club thing is a new challenge completely. It's a new thing that he has never been part of, and I think it's extremely exciting project for him. And yes, we under FSG are evolving, but this multi-club idea is not a new thing for FSG. They have looked into it in the past a couple times, actually.
Moby, coming on the club, the multi-club ownerships. Now we've seen a huge and quick sort of trajectory from 2017 to 2024 now of how many clubs are actually involved in this. I think they said it's like between 235 and 300 clubs involved. We know in England there's 33 clubs who are involved in first tier, second tier, third tier sort of club ownerships with feeder clubs. FIFA banned, I think in 2018 or 2019, they banned the third-party agents. So the likes of Kia Chirabchurin, who used to have Mascherano or Tevez, they banned all that, and they banned group ownerships. Now I know like players like, I don't want to use them because I don't think it's right, but it might be different now. Like players like Luis Diaz, players like Moises Caicedo, South American players were kind of owned by a group. It could have been a group of brothers or whatnot, or family. But my question is the vast growth in MCOs happening because of the third-party agents, where clubs now are buying a club in South America and buying all that talent, because ultimately that young talent that goes to a feeder club, his ultimate principal sort of dream will be Liverpool. That's his destination. We've seen it with Chelsea, with Strasbourg. A youngster from France will play for Strasbourg, but his ultimate dream is Chelsea. Is that what we're looking at now? That it does work for the youngsters, and yes, people are saying, but they're using the feeder clubs, but the feeder clubs are benefiting in some kind of way as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I like to not use the word feeder clubs, even though it's such a common term that everybody uses. I think whatever club FSG buys will be won't be a feeder club in the true sense of the way like Chelsea and everything is. It's going to be more of a partner club, a sister club. And the reason behind it is that if you look at FSG, and this is the argument that one person made to me a few days ago, and they're saying, well, will they even invest in Liverpool because they'll have focus on that, this and that. I mean, look at Liverpool. It's a fully self-sustaining club. If they're going to buy a sister club or a multi-club, they're not going to go and invest millions there right off the bat. If they're going to make it self-sustainable, and it's going to take time. So I think if you do this thing respectfully, if you do this thing sustainably, it's a good thing because there's a lot of benefits. One of the huge benefits I see is that Liverpool's academy process, playing process, mentality, all of that stuff will be downloaded or at least shared across a secondary club that we buy, and that improves their level of football knowledge, and when you collaborate with some of the best data scientists, maybe physiotherapists and health nutritionists, there's a lot we can learn from each other, and I think there's a lot of benefit in that, right? So done properly, I think it's not going to be like the old days with the third party ownership. I think it can be done properly, maybe not the Chelsea way, maybe the other ways, like the Red Bull ways, where each club still has to respect each other's players, and you just can't go and say give me, and you have to negotiate the fee at some point, but obviously you get first dibs.
Avi mentions a good point, Moby, doesn't he? But I'm just looking at his whiteboard in the background. Henry's nephew is promoting buying Bitcoin today, but it should be writing buy a partner club today. But Moby, he talks about the focus of operation of like the likes of Manchester City and the perception that the feeder club or partner club, their fans have, that they're just there to serve the bigger player in all of this. But it does work both ways. Someone like Paloma, for example, who were in the doldrums of Italian football a few years ago, are now playing in Serie B. And it's a two-way thing, isn't it? A benefit where Manchester City are sort of tapping into the market, or a team, such a traditional club, one of the oldest clubs in Italian football, the likes of Toni, Cavani, Dybala coming through the ranks there. But all
Javier Pastore.
Javier Pastore, Argentine, brilliant player, linked to Liverpool for a few years ago. But maybe, just like I said, now they're playing in Serie B and probably get promoted as well over the next couple of years. It's a two-way operation, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's two ways. First of all, in this world, it's impossible to stop this multi-club thing. So what's happening right now is that these clubs are going out and scouting 16-year-old players, 15 years old players, and signing them on, like Chelsea did with Kendrick Paez at age 16, and sort of saying, when you turn 17 or 8, when you turn 18, I'll be able to bring you and put you in a club, and then I'll slowly give you a pathway. So if we don't get in those conversations early, you're going to lose out. You're going to lose out on these young talents, and the world of football is becoming unsustainable with these prices. So the only way to compete with the top talent is usually if you go get them early, nurture them, and then make them stars, and then keep them in the system. Same way, like you're saying, Asim, we have all these great players in our academy that don't get opportunities unless people are injured. To give these players opportunities, you can transfer them on to these clubs that are playing sometimes in the top tier league, like Brighton's player Simon Adingra. Everybody knows Simon Adingra. Well, last year he was playing at USG. He was playing first team. He was playing in Europe. He was playing in top tier league. I mean, that's a really good experience for a player to get. So it works both ways, and it helps USG. They made it to the Europa League this year.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it definitely benefits the club both sides.
Moby, a question, because there are a few good questions in here. One from Sony. I actually don't like the multi-club ownership model because I believe it's bad for football, particularly the smaller feeder clubs, but it seems it's the only way to compete with City, etc. There's two arguments here. He doesn't like the multi-club ownership model, but you've just told us why it is successful for the bigger clubs. But is this the only sustainable way to compete with the likes of City, with the riches of Chelsea, and Manchester United as well?
Absolutely. I started this whole conversation by saying, in a perfect world, I wouldn't like a multi-club ownership. I would just stay the way things are. But unfortunately, it's not the case. 13 or 14 clubs in the Premier League alone have multi-clubs. If you look at Bournemouth, they have Lorient. If you look at Arsenal, they have Colorado Rapids. City has all those clubs. Chelsea has Strasbourg. I mean, the list goes on. All the
20 out
smaller
of 30,
clubs.
Moby. 20 out of 30 Premier League
Yeah,
clubs.
it's crazy. Like it's quite amazing that the amount of clubs out there, they already have a partnership. So if you want to compete for those talents, those high caliber talents, you have two choices: get them early, or pay 100 million for them down the road. Like if a Caicedo kind of player, we could have signed him a couple years back for about 2 or 3 million, and in this way, if you brought them into a system, you don't have to pay the 100 million, whatever it takes 2 years later. So it is the only way, unfortunately, to compete long term, in my opinion.
And I think there's a comment there. I don't think Moby's being hypercritical. He might have voiced his opinion on this on Twitter. And I think in an ideal world, I don't think we all would want a multi-club sort of facet ownership deal where, the poorer
Yeah,
clubs are not benefiting. But I think if we develop this the right way, I don't think anyone loses out, Moby. If am I correct? I mean,
Absolutely.
I look at the Salzburg deal and to Leipzig and the Red Bull Brazil team and the Red Bull New York team. I think all four are interconnected. Where, say, for example, Szoboszlai comes from Salzburg, his next development step is at Leipzig, and then to Liverpool. But there is that thought that there's a lot of sort of money orientation going around there because Leipzig are not going to pay Salzburg a certain fee, but Leipzig, when they sold Szoboszlai to us, they're reaping in like 56 million
Hmm.
or 50 million, whatever the clause was, or whether there was a release clause or not. We paid big money for him. So who essentially gets that big pot of money? Because surely there should be a clause where the lesser clubs, say Salzburg, get a bit of that money where they are able to develop their academy, which is
Absolutely.
world renowned. They can develop that further, right?
Absolutely. And I have never been against multi-club. Actually, I've actually always wanted us to have a multi-club, just because this is the way of the future. You can't fight. I think we really need to get away from this notion that football is a clean sport. It's this mythical sport where
100%.
we have Liverpool has a sponsor on their chest, a Standard Chartered, who's been fined two times. The last one in 2019 for $2 billion for money laundering and finance terrorism financing. This is the shirt that we wear on our chest. When we buy that club shirt. So to sit back and say football is a clean sport is actually a joke. So let's move away from that topic because it isn't. And we all know that some clubs are cleaner than others, and that's the reality. And that's just what football is right now. So in a sport where the goalposts seem to be moved a lot, and unfortunately, nobody's able to do a lot about it, we have to get in the game. But you have to get in the game respectfully and sustainably. And I think, like you mentioned, the Red Bull philosophy, the Red Bull way, there's a lot we can do. I mean, look at Red Bull Leipzig. Our academy, La AXA, is actually designed after Red Bull's academy in Salzburg. So you can build up these fellow partner clubs, if you want to call it, or sister clubs, whatever you want to call it, into real bastion of advanced academies and player development projects.
Moby, another club that has benefited from this, not directly of City, but I'm sure been there's been players that have gone out on loan to this team in Spain, Girona FC, who are having an incredible season, but they're one of the beneficiaries, aren't they? I don't want to use FIDA, partner club. I think that's the right term. We'll try to use that today, Asim. Partner club. They're one of the beneficiaries, aren't they, of having this sort of multi-club ownership system because they're fighting for the La Liga.
Absolutely. And didn't one of their striker come from New York City FC, the one
FC.
that yeah, exactly. And he was the prolific. What is his name? Castellano. The striker is just incredible. He scored like 3 goals against Real Madrid in one game a few months ago. So yeah, it absolutely goes both ways. Girona is now, I don't know where they are on the La Liga table, but for a long time they were number one day, looking at the Champions League place potentially, but if not in Europa League. So these small clubs that become part of these big clubs, fans get to experience, European nights that are not usually attainable. So, done respectfully, absolutely can go both ways.
Another one. You're okay with me?
Yeah, I was going to say about Manchester City, Moby. Yeah, you're right in terms of 13 clubs, partner clubs on their database. But what do you think the target for Liverpool is? To develop their portfolio? There were links with some 4 Brazilian clubs, Internacional, Botafogo, Cruzeiro, Paranense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I butchered a few of the pronunciations, but
that's pretty good. That's pretty good, even for a boy from a boy from Bradford. That's pretty good.
I'm
a good pretender at times. But Moby, what do you think? Do you think Liverpool go back into those, revitalizing those links, or do you think Liverpool go elsewhere this time? Because there has been an increase, especially after Brexit and the economic rights that were taken away with the third-party ownership that Avi was talking about, that Liverpool go to some sort of club where the markets like Belgium are a big attraction. I think I read 2/3 of the Belgium clubs are with partner clubs. So do you think Liverpool go with the tide?
I think Brazilian clubs are becoming more smart because they are the biggest exporters of footballers in the world. I mean, if you look at the purchase of Man City, they purchased Club Bahia in Brazil for the same amount that it cost the Abu Dhabi people to buy Man City
Moby,
13 years ago.
isn't there KK, the Brazilian? I think he was on loan in buyout, wasn't he? And he's
Yeah,
Man City owned as well, right?
exactly. So that club actually cost the same amount that Man City did years ago. So these clubs are becoming expensive. They're not cheap anymore.
Hmm.
I think the real benefit is clubs like you mentioned, us in Belgium, because one, you get to play in an European league that you can have opportunities
Yeah.
to play in a European competition potentially down the road, like Brighton did with USG, who played
Yeah.
against us this season, both owned by Tony Bloom, of course. But also, they might, even though the restrictions on work permits have really changed for South Americans, you don't really need points like before. But you still have players from certain areas of the world. They need work permits, and if they
Hmm.
can play in top 5 European leagues, you get enough work permit points to then move into getting into the UK.
Hmm.
I
But
think
is this
sorry.
just an overall question, just to finish off? Is this, are we sort of diving too deep? Is this just a sort of a bigger play going on, Mubi, where this is just to manipulate the transfer market or manipulate the PSR rules ultimately?
I don't know if this is to manipulate any of that. I think this is something, like I said, this is not a new thing for FSG. We were looking into a club in Spain for a very long time and had lots of discussions with them, but it didn't ultimately work out 2 or 3 years ago. And so this is well before Edwards was even in the picture. He was gone at that time. So I think this has been their long-term goal for FSG. If they were not going to sell, maybe they're going to try and create some sort of football group. I can't speak for them. You might have to ask the nephew. To ask the nephew for more insight than me. But yeah, I don't think this is some sinister plot. I think this is just something that every club has to look at seriously if you want to compete.
Moby, Redbird, who were interested at one point in Liverpool, obviously led by Jerry Cardinal. They've actually already, and he's a latecomer to the world of football. But he obviously, Redbird are the majority holders of AC Milan. They've got ownership of Toulouse. And then you've got Arctos, who've also got a share and a minority share in FSG, but they've also recently just had Atlanta added to their portfolio, as well as a small minority stake in PSG. Is this something where we could see Arctos, Redbird, and FSG come together or collaborate together in a sort of unique style where they combine the clubs and maybe loan out youngsters and develop youngsters, because we're talking about big hitters here like AC Milan, PSG, and Liverpool? Or does FIFA come in the way of that?
Yeah, good question. I think Redbird has their own headaches. Just today, the AC Milan office was raided by the Italian police. They still think it's owned by Elliott Fund. There's a lot of discrepancy there. I don't think we'll be able to do any sort of partnership with giant groups and make these big, groups of companies and train and exchange players. It's going to be impossible. First of all, there is rules against clubs from the same ownership group playing in the same competition if you have vested interest that cannot be clarified. So Red Bull Salzburg and Red Bull Leipzig in 2017 and 18 both participated in the Champions League only after they proved that they don't control each other's plans and strategies directly. Same happened last year. Same happened last year with Aston Villa and Boa Vista.
Yeah.
Same happened with USG and Brighton. Same happened with one more club, and AC Milan and Toulouse. They're both in European competitions. So you had to prove. They had to change style. I think if I'm not mistaken, for USG, Tony Bloom had to show that USG CEO had some ownership into the club, and he transferred a little bit of percentages into his name to kind of make it look even more clarified that there is no conflict of interest in that regard. So I think anybody thinking that we cannot make this super club and just change players between each other in a snap of a finger, it's not that easy. It's not going to be that easy, but obviously it's your own group. You'll be able to do transfers much easier and much more amicably, but it's still going to be separate football operations.
Maybe there's a question here from KD, or a thought maybe, and I'd love your sort of thought on this because I know you love your South American market. But KD says a club in North America and South America makes sense. Proximity to FSG and also a club in Japan, perhaps. What's the rule for European clubs, especially when it comes to UEFA competitions?
It's a really good point by Katie, actually, and thanks for the question. I think a club in North America does make a lot of sense, but MLS clubs are becoming too expensive to jump in and buy. Some of the prices are ridiculous, to be honest. So I see down the road, perhaps, maybe North American club, but again, ultimately, if the goal is to provide European experience to players and potentially in European competitions, I think Europe is the way to go. A club in Belgium is not going to cost you a lot. I know Oostend, for example, was for sale. They play in the Belgian Premier League, and clubs in Portugal, even though they're complicated, would be a dream because Brazil's biggest export of players is guess where? To Portugal.
And that obviously comes back to what Sajjan, I think you mentioned, Moby. This helps extremely with work permits because it's an issue that we've had with some South Americans who have come over from Colombia or Brazil in the past. And we're talking back maybe 10, 15 years where we used to have some Brazilians, but they couldn't get a work permit. I think of Mark Gonzalez, who had to go out on loan to Spain. I think of Anderson Arroyo, who's been on 6, 7 loans and still can't get a work permit. I think we had a Brazilian, Alan Rodriguez,
Yeah.
who couldn't get a permit on the UK. That helps, doesn't it? Having a foundation in Brazil, but having a feeder club in Portugal, and then coming to England eventually, if that's the principle of the youngster, if he actually makes it.
Yeah, I mean, those are much more easier now. FIFA has relaxed, Premier League have relaxed the rules now. Before you needed enough points, you need to be called up to the national team to get enough points to be able to get a work permit. And now, if you play in Copa Libertadores or any of these competitions, you get all the points. So it's almost an easy thing. And I believe last year, Premier League changed the rules again. You actually can sign 2 to 3 players without any work permit needed as well. You'll just be a shoe-in. But if the strategy is, if a club, a partner club, then you need more than 2 or 3 players, then yes, absolutely, that'll help with that.
And maybe the question will be on fans who are disgruntled every summer about our expenditure, incomings, outgoings, but especially how much we spend in the summer. There's some fans out there that'll think that, this multi-club ownership model will stop us spending what we spend normally in the summer, which isn't a lot according to them. But does this affect the current model that we work in, and especially Edwards coming back and Richard Hughes? Does this stop anything or sort of disrupt the data analytical side of it when it comes to purchasing the right players? Or is the feeder club something for the future?
Yeah,
But it's not for the now, is it?
I mean, it depends on the need, right? If you're needing somebody in a profile for Liverpool, then obviously you're going to attack and get that type of player for the club. But if it isn't, and if it's just looking at high potential youth that you can get a very, very favorable price, then obviously you would need a partner club for that kind of activity. And like I said in the beginning of the show, I think one of the things you'll see is that a lot of our Liverpool is completely sustainable. FSG has not really invested much, even also and even we just found out that for this summer Liverpool activated a credit facility for 100 million to buy Soboslai and Alexis McAllister directly with the club. It wasn't an FSG thing, so I think it'll be completely sustainable, completely separate operation. If it comes down to it, I can't see FSG all of a sudden, having never spent much money into Liverpool and can do transfers, going to a new club that they own and just spending millions. I just don't see that.
Maybe there's a question. Maybe there's a question from Beat the Press. He said, "Would we not have to stay away from Europe with regards to the Nice Jim Ratcliffe situation? This would affect European participation, would it not?" Where in sort of cases like you touched on, UEFA have showed an acceptance and provided admission to sort of teams where there are some loopholes, sort of very, very little technicalities. If Manchester City have got big lawyers to find loopholes, I'm sure some little clubs can find a few less than 115. But maybe that's a discussion for another day. But in terms of participation,
It hasn't dropped the call?
I think it froze, or have you?
Oh, I think I'm back. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, in terms of the participation in UEFA, surely it's too late now. There's been sort of some comments about, if it goes too far, FIFA will, come in, and I'm sure they will sort of tighten the rules with PSR and a few other sort of rulings as well. But what do you make of this question in regards to this would affect European participation? Because it's all about being the sole partner. Do you have decisive control? It's all about technicalities, isn't it?
Yeah, just like I explained earlier, these are kind of things that have been dealt with for the last 6, 7 years, with Red Bull being participating in European competition. So, like I said, this year there was three hurdles that Aston Villa, AC Milan and Brighton both overcame. And the rules are pretty simple. You just can't have a super controlling interest into each club. So that's easy to prove. You can always move things around. You can always move the percentages around as needed. There's a lot of smart people who are going to do this play properly. And I think with a club and an ownership as methodical as FSG and the Edwards and Co are, I think they're going to set it up from the beginning so that there's none of that stuff to worry about down the road.
Maybe a question from Beat the Press again. Great questions coming today from all angles in the comments. South American or Asian, I believe we could find some rough diamonds. We can also find potential players, plus elevate the financial side of the club with shirt sales, etc., from their players signing. Now, there's a club, Moby, in Uruguay, also called Liverpool. That would be quite a romantic story, wouldn't it?
Liverpool Montevideo, yeah, actually, it's the club's name was from a lot of sailors and shipping companies that used to travel and dock in Uruguay from Liverpool. Liverpool was obviously the capital of the trade at one time, the maritime. So that's the history behind that. South American clubs are not easy to purchase. They have a lot of fan ownership. They have a lot of convoluted ownership. Fans are very passionate. They will burn the ground if needed. It's not as easy and methodical as, let's say, buying a club overseas. And hence, not many clubs in Europe have, clubs in South America. If you look at it, it's just a few. It's just Bahia with Man City and Botafogo, who Textor bought with a lot of problems. A lot of problems. So it's convoluted. It's not easy. Um, I don't necessarily think you need a club in South America to sign South American gems. We have some of the best scouts there, and I think we can always sign them and move them as needed to clubs in wherever it may be that we buy. But it definitely helps if we could do in South America.
Just a
And
super Tavi before you
okay,
go.
yeah.
Salam on Ramadan. Big up Tamizi, big supporter of ours, and hope you well, bro. Don't think we'll be aggressive this summer in transfers. By the way, thoughts on Kubasi, and I'm impressed with his diagonal passes.
How
Maybe go for it, Avi. Go for
How
it, bro.
Kubasi, yeah, 17-year-old Barcelona centre back. He's oozes class, very assuring, very composed. Just coming to the team this season, and him alongside Lamine Yamal, who's an absolute superstar. Yeah, he's
You're
he's a,
not.
he's a huge talent.
So is Barcelona your sister company as well? You're academy director at Liverpool, but also at Barcelona as well,
It's
yeah?
the La Messiah, how can you not be full of compliments for La Messiah? But
Is there
Moby,
conflict of interest there, Avi?
no conflict of interest. No conflict of interest. Moby, am I right in thinking that? And this might be a stupid question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway because I'm sure I'm not the only one. Liverpool can't have a club in England, can they? As a sister club, like a first division or a second division club, can they?
I have to look at that myself. I don't think that's possible. No, if that was the case, I think Man City would have had three by now. So uh, I think they would have, and Chelsea would have as well. So I don't think that's possible. But again, I would have to double check that actually.
And maybe in terms of the clubs that we could sort of be looking in certain sort of countries, give me like on top of your head, maybe 2, 3 European countries where we'll probably look at what Portugal, Spain, maybe France.
Mm.
Yeah, Spain's been of interest in the past. I think a I don't know who in the chat mentioned it, but kudos to you. Second division clubs, don't write them off. I think that's where the real bargains are. A club like Chaussure, for example, in France, League Two, would have been incredible. That's where Konate came from, and taking a
Yeah.
club like that with all that would be interesting. I would keep an eye on Paris FC. Paris FC's, I think, if I'm not mistaken,
Second
uh,
division
one,
too.
Yeah, their previous head scout is actually a scout for us in France. So we have deep links with Paris FC. Would be incredible. They have also an incredible history. A lot of good players have come through there. But again, good bargains and a lot of good bargains to be had. You know, the amount of talent that France has popped up. You know, I don't need to tell you guys and remind you guys. So I think somebody mentioned there. Fadi mentioned, I believe so. So yeah, someone like that would be of interest, I believe. But I think French clubs in League Two, there's a lot of them, and you look at the names, you'll recognize who they are. Big names, fallen on tough times,
Mm.
and would be incredible.
Avi, I had a
Sorry.
question for you, Avi, because I think, by the way, were you CC'd in Mike Gordon's email to the members of staff today?
Oh, I
No?
wasn't.
In his email, he mentioned, he used the term, we're keeping up with the Joneses. I just wanted to ask you, how aggressive do you think FSG will be in this? Now there's an acceptance in actually acquiring a partner club, Avi. Can you see them buying 4 or 5 over the next 4 or 5 years, or do you think just one or two work the loan system, share players, share ideas, analysis, and the data between one or two clubs? Because there is a sort of perception where if you have, the more you have, the more you can do. I read someone like the ex-City player and Huddersfield player, Frank Moy. City used him without spending the money, but made 8 million profit just by him going from 3 4 clubs. So I think he ended up in Melbourne FC once on a one occasion as well. But how aggressive do you think FSG go down this line? Because Avi, now in terms of the infrastructure, Anfield, in terms of the main stand, in terms of Upper Annie, everything's done. Can they really go for it in this?
I don't think it's done yet, Asim. I think they're going to try one more time to get an extension on a certain cop end. But let's see if they can. Let's see if they can do that. But no, see, I'm in two minds here. Maybe Moby can come into this as well. I think Liverpool will look at, well, if we've looked at the way Leipzig have operated their academy, and their infrastructure and their training ground, I'm sure we'll look at the model that Red Bull have done. And I think Red Bull, Moby, if I'm not mistaken, their sort of quadrant where they've got a club in Austria who's churning out youngsters, who are going to this sort of plan move, which is Leipzig, Holland the exception, Minamino an exception maybe, and then they've got Red Bull Brazil, so they've covered sort of South America, and then they've got the North America Red Bull New York. I think that is like the sort of ideal model, unless you're really like City and you're covering every base, like I said, all continents around the world. I think ideally it would be a club in South America, which we sort of purchase, and then a club in Europe, a lesser club, maybe a second division club like the Paris FC, Moby has mentioned. And then I think a three club, I think they would go for like a trifecta. I think that could work. I'm not sure 4 or 5, Asim. Again, I would need to learn more about the logistics of how that works, making sure there's no sort of controversial sort of legalization terms that they would have to pass. But I'm pretty sure they've already thought this through, and a person like Michael Edwards on board, I think they'll be aggressive in their approach, and maybe we could hear something maybe end of the year or early next year.
Gene's become an estate agent, by the way. He says cop end impossible. Buy the houses behind Kenny and increase it. I'm sure Poole did own some of the houses, but did end up selling them as well. Gene's become a local estate agent.
Sajid Estates. But Moby, is that what you see, Moby? Like maybe it's a game of patience, and when the right opportunity arises, and we know our board, our owners do like to bide their time, then sort of take the plunge.
Yeah, I think it'll be slow. I think it'll be very methodical. I think they will start with one and see how it goes and learn from it, and slowly expand. I don't. I think again, these guys are very methodical, as we have seen. Everything they do is very thought out, very planned out. You they hired this new guy. What's his name? The Red Sox GM, is it? Epstein, not the other Epstein, the good Epstein.
Mhm.
And having Billy Hogan in charge of CEO FFSG. Edwards Sporting CEO. I think these are all a lot of new people working together, and it takes time for these ideas and these plans to develop in a new group. So I think we'll start slow. I think we'll get the one and then see what happens with that, and if it's successful or not in the first place. But yeah, I think slow and steady will get there. But it's one thing's for sure, it's definitely happening. It's 100% it was in the press release. It was the reason why Edwards came back, and it's pretty much a guarantee at this point.
I've got a feeling, Moby, that Liverpool have already looked quite, not really deep, but really looked
Of
into
course,
a sort
of
of.
course.
I know we've been linked with other clubs in the past, but I think Liverpool are not very close, but close enough
Yeah,
to be making some sort of an announcement of them announcing that we've acquired a sister club. I've just got a feeling when there is talk, normally when the sort of journals get to know about it, normally there's news coming upon that. So it'll be
yeah.
interesting to see, how soon Liverpool do make a call on that.
Yeah, you're right. They could be way ahead of their plans. I mean, these things are pretty kept close to the chest, unless you're CC'd in the emails, like some people we know here are. But most of us don't know much about it. So I think yeah, you're right. And one, I want to just give a shout out to somebody who said Schalke. Really, really smart shout out on that. Schalke is potentially losing their license to be a professional football club. They're in so much trouble. They might actually lose that from the second division where they are right now. But German ownership is pretty complicated with the 50+1 rule. So, uh, maybe a partner in the truest sense, but can you really own a German club? I think it's extremely difficult. They defeated Emotion last week or the week before about selling, media rights and everything, and it failed because the fans were uproar. There's a huge uproar on that. So, yeah, unfortunately, I can't see a German club, but Schalke would be a dream.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree. Oh, he's gone.
Did you end up choking him out?
No, because you were talking. I think Moby went. I wanted to
No,
actually.
sorry,
Go,
go for it, Avi.
no, I wanted to get away a little bit from the ownership and talk about Richard Hughes. And when it came to player acquisitions now. Hey,
Yeah.
Moby, you still there?
Sorry about that. I
It's
completely cut out.
all good, all good. Moby, so another question that came away from the ownership now. I want to talk about Richard Hughes, who is gonna, we all know that it's all done. It's a done deal that Richard Hughes will be the sporting director.
Yeah.
Don't think we need that's an exclusive. But Richard Hughes, in terms of player acquisition now come summer, surely Michael Edwards will still have some kind of say with the data team, with the analytical team about who's coming in this summer, right?
Yeah, somebody mentioned today, and it was really smart thing they said. They said, I'd be very surprised if Hughes is not already working behind the scenes, and I believe that's true. I think it's impossible for someone to not start. He can't officially start till June 1, but I mean to expect him not to do any work, unofficially, I think it's almost impossible to think of. So I think, yeah, you're right. I think they will definitely have says, and I think don't be surprised if they're already unofficially having a coffee chat and figuring things out.
There's a guy in the comments, PDEX in the lab. I'm pretty sure these are the same PDEX who's got a restaurant, Indian restaurant near Portland. Message me if that's the one, PDEX. Countries they should target is France, Netherlands, Belgium, and Portugal. Biggest import of foreign and nationally grown players. We've covered that earlier on the show, PDEX. But yeah, definitely those countries would be would entice. One of those clubs would be enticing in the second division, lower divisions, for us to purchase. Moby, in terms of Jurgen Klopp, he is going, but he had some great things that he said about Michael Edwards, and I think he was in the sort of notion that it is a great a great appointment that Michael Edwards is coming back. Does that sort of dispel any rumors that there was any disharmony between the two when they were both at the club?
It's a good question. I don't think any of them will say anything publicly about each other in any sort of light that's other than positive. I don't think Klopp has ever been like that. So I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot of history there. I think there's a reason why, he left. I think there's a reason why, Julian Ward also left after a year. But again, these are things under the water right now. The past is the past. When you work together in such high stress jobs, it's not impossible for people to lose that synergy that they come up with sometimes. So whatever happened in the past, let's hope that stays there. I hope we can move forward right now with a renewed hope and all that. So let's hope we can give Klopp the buy he deserves. and be excited for the next chapter.
Beat the Press says Edwards and Hughes will be leading the charge behind the scenes. My opinion, we will end up going for the sporting manager Ruben Amorim or Nagelsmann. Surely not Nagelsmann, Moby. I think that ship has sailed, hasn't it? But Amorim, definitely a contender.
Yeah, hard to say, right? It just feels like, if you ask somebody, they'll say it's a done deal, and if you ask many people, it probably hasn't been, hasn't gone past the conversational part. Um, yeah, I think Nagelsmann. I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of talk about in the German media that his girlfriend used to work for Bayern, and a lot of the players were against him because somehow the lineups and club secrets would leak to the press via that relationship. And I don't think, again, the truth is somewhere in between. So, um, I don't know if you want to be involved in something like that. I think the club would probably want somebody a bit more, you know, not involved in that kind of circus. But again, nobody is impossible at this stage. We haven't signed anybody yet, so I think it's definitely between Alonso and Amorim. But
Well,
until it happens, it's open race.
do you think the sporting manager is a bit more open or inclined towards data analysis and the numbers? I know we've got a bit of a sort of short sample size when it comes to Alonso, Moby, but is this why so when you hear Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards coming to Liverpool, the natural links to Amrim is because he's more inclined to science? But well, that's the feeling anyway out there.
So your question is like, do they fit the data profile? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask some people, Amorim fits the data profile a bit more maybe than Alonso. But again, I think both have worked with youth players, so it really depends on how people are looking at this from a data perspective. But I think we talked about this the last time we were on this show, that the fall off from Klopp to a manager that doesn't have an emotional attachment to the club would be very difficult to transition from.
He's still there?
Quite the show. Yeah, no, I'm here. Quite the show. A lot of information digested there, Moby. I feel maybe that Chelsea, they did this with Vitesse Arnhem, and I'm not sure what the relationship is now with Chelsea with Vitesse Arnhem, but they're pretty much big on this multi-club ownership as well, aren't they, under Bowley? And I think they have come into trouble before over this. But they're a club that have really benefited from players that have gone out on loan, out to Europe, come back, and they've sold for like 15, 20 million, players that I hadn't even heard of.
Yeah, I think Bowley's going to be expanding very aggressively. I think, they wanted to buy Sporting, right? They tried to buy Sporting, and it was a big problem, and PSG had a problem with that in the Ugarte chase. I think they will probably expand into South America. I think they're looking into a club in Argentina right now. And don't be surprised if they buy a club this summer. They're going to be very aggressive. I can't see them sitting back. But buying clubs is one thing. Managing them successfully is a whole different ballgame. So.
Okay. Avi, is that everything? Moby, you want to say anything else? You want to touch upon anything else?
No,
We've got a small matter of a game tomorrow, but it should be a routine game, especially being with 5-1 up.
I think Avi is the best to answer on that one. What he thinks on the scoreline tomorrow. Avi, what's your thoughts?
Am I right in believing that Gomez, Konate, Van Dijk are the only centre backs that we can choose from because of a new ruling? Not a new ruling, but a ruling that we can't pick anyone else from the academy, or maybe Kwanzaa actually.
No, I think Kwanzaa plays.
Kwanzaa plays. Konate, I think, rested. I think we've got to give as many second teamers that we can give an opportunity to tomorrow. I think play the youngsters, play that if Jaden Downs is fit, let him play. Lewis Kumas, but again, I think it's got to do with eligibility. But no, I think we're safe and sound and saving the bodies for the big one on Sunday. So I think that's the real big one.
You say Abby says it's a big one, Moby, but do we play our first team on Sunday? Can we take a risk in that FA Cup game, or do you see Klopp even making some changes for Sunday?
I think it'll be a fairly light work tomorrow, depending on how the game goes. I mean, if they score 5, then obviously you have to use the big guns. But I think he'll play it safe, to be honest. But we might not have the players in defense like Reece Williams, who I wish we could use for this, but apparently
Mm.
he's not eligible. But Salah looks fit. Klopp looks like he wants to build his fitness up. So I think there'll be a lot of rotation. But yeah, I think it should be a fairly, hopefully, knock on wood, being respectful of the opponent. Should be an easy game in Anfield. But again, I do want to be respectful of the opponent always.
Moby, we heard just a quick one. We heard some talk in regards to one of my favorite players at Liverpool, Luis Diaz, today. Apparently, his agent's already flirting him towards PSG if Mbappe does get his expected move to Real Madrid. What kind of money are we talking? Not that I want to talk about any outgoings, especially when it comes to Luis Diaz, but what kind of money are we looking at? Especially with Edwards and Hughes in charge now. For a Luis Diaz, are we looking at 80 and above?
I think it's a good number, isn't it? Like, I mean, Edwards is back, so obviously, we'll be back to selling, hopefully the way we used to. But I think, 75. I think 75. You'd be laughing, and you'd be, if a player wants to leave, and I've said this before, the wages will come into play because I think his wages, I think will be substantial at PSG, or Madrid or wherever he wants to go. But I think 75, 80, I think you can't be sad about it. If we end the season with one more trophy, hopefully, the one that we want. But I think we can't be disappointed with that. If a player wants to leave, there's nothing you can do to hold them. I think you just hope they're happy whatever decision they make. So,
is it a decision that way? I don't think he would want to leave, but it might be a too good an offer, and for him, on a financial aspect, it might just be an offer that he can't refuse if they offer him like 200, 250.
of course.
And the money's good to us. It's sort of like a bittersweet sort of deal. Not a bittersweet, but it's like a gentleman's agreement where both parties are happy.
Yeah, and look, we have Gakpo can play on the left, Jota on the left. We'll probably sign somebody as well. We're fully covered on the left wing if he does leave. So, we have a lot of, Darwin can play on the left. I mean, I like him centrally, but I'm just saying, like, we're very lucky in that sense that we have all these options. So let's see what happens. Obviously, the talk is out there. I think we're going to hear a lot more rumors, but I think for these players, I think Spain or somewhere else like that probably is the dream. And I think it's something that's accepted and known. But Paris isn't too shabby either, I think, for some of them. So let's see what happens. But yeah, I think the figures you're saying, Avi, are pretty reasonable.
Okay, brilliant. Quick predictions for tomorrow and Sunday before we go, Avi.
I'm gonna cover my backside by giving you a prediction for the United game on Friday, when me and Gene are back. But tomorrow, a 2-0 to Liverpool. It's a game where we're gonna watch. I think it's the only game we're probably gonna watch between now and the end of the season, where there's no pressure, there's no anxiety, there's no butterflies. So I'm gonna try to just enjoy it for what it is.
Okay, we'll use that as an opportunity to promote your Friday night chit chat show, which I've been hosting for the last 3 to 4 weeks. But anyway, moving on swiftly, Moby, a quick prediction, brother, tomorrow and Sunday.
I would say a 3-0. Hopefully tomorrow should do the job. I think that's a sort of like 3-1. Somebody's saying. I think. I think we'll do. I think that'll do nicely. I think it's just going to be a runabout for some other boys, and hopefully nobody gets injured, and we're through. Sunday, man, I don't even know. Like, my predictions have not been that great, but I'll go with what Avi said pretty much. I think I'll stick with that. So
I think we'll beat United 2-1 Sunday.
Over 9,000 fans at Old Trafford. I'm looking forward to it. Should be a good one. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Moby. As ever, really, really good to sort of get your insight in the ongoings about the evolution of the pitch as well. I know Avi said it's been going on for a few years, but I think there's Liverpool are coming and joining the table now, and be interesting on our personal behalf as to what sort of direction they go and take this club. It's exciting times on and off the pitch. But Avi, as ever, thank you very much for coming on during work hours. Buy Bitcoin, buy sister clubs, buy partner clubs, buy feeder clubs. Call it what you want. Liverpool are in the business of partner clubs and expanding the empire of Liverpool. Moby, thanks again. We shall see you very, very soon.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Just wanted to give a shout out to everybody in the chat, guys. Some really great questions. Thank you so much for some good questions out there. But please hit the like on the way out. Subscribe to these guys. They put up good content every week. So please support them. They're great guys. But thank you everyone for their good questions.
Brilliant. Liverpool are in the business off the pitch. Liverpool are in the business on the pitch. Enjoy it. This is going to be a one hell of a ride. Take care and good night.
Good night.